Hi everybody, it's me, Jamie. We're coming at you another What Bothers Me. Today, we're talking about something that I talked about a long time ago, or I've mentioned it a few times throughout the year in other videos. I want to talk about the live-action Kim Possible movie. I didn't explain, or I didn't completely, go in too deep with this because obviously there wasn't too much information out, but now the movie is out. It is, on movie websites, and it debuted on Disney Channel not that long ago, and I have mentioned that I was going to watch it, even though I knew it was going to be terrible, and then I was going to talk about it on my channel, and here we are, my beautiful children. So today I'm going to talk about it and the problems, and when I say the problems, I mean the multiple problems that it came with. So, let me just fix that. Okay. But I want to talk about the multiple problems that this movie came with and presented. Now, I went into this knowing, I was prepared for the trash that was going to be presented to me. Yeah? When you know a movie's gonna be bad, but you're still gonna see it anyway just to see how bad. Or if it's something like this where it's something based on an old cartoon and they bring it back, you want to see how bad they mess it up in a way. So that's how I kind of approached this. I was like, okay, I know it's gonna be trash. Certain plots are not going to be used. Fine. I didn't mind if they changed a little bit of the story, or if they had to add stuff or take away stuff. But this movie does it in every which way that's wrong. I knew that the movie was going to be garbage, but this movie is garbage. If you haven't seen the movie yet, don't continue to watch this video because I'm going to throw out a bunch of spoilers, technically. But honestly, there's nothing interesting about this movie. So, honestly, I don't think me talking about it is going to matter that much because this movie is just so full of nothing. Okay? So, I've been seeing the trailers and the sneak peeks of what this movie was going to look like and how they were going to present it, and I already had problems with it, but I was letting it go. My main problem being some of the casting choices, and I'm going to touch upon that now. My first one was Ron, because that was the only one that I saw that was a problem, really, at least as of what I saw up until that point. Ron was my number one problem because he looks absolutely nothing like the cartoon whatsoever, which is stupid when you're making a movie that's live action based on a cartoon. You would think you want the characters to look, I don't know, like the original. But he looks absolutely nothing like the original Ron. The original Ron was blonde with straight hair, and he was about the same height as Kim, and he was about the same age. This actor that they have to play Ron is absolutely nothing like that. First of all, his hair is somewhat of a dirty blonde, brownish, weird color. Second of all, it's curly. Why? Third, this actor looks younger than the actress who plays Kim, which is kind of weird. I mean, it's not bad because in this version, they're only friends. They're not the romantic couple yet. Because eventually that happens in the cartoon. Eventually they become, an item. But I think this is obviously this is before that. This is their first day of school. This is the origin where it all began. Fine. Whatever. I was even letting him slide. But just other people of who they cast to play were making me so, internally upset. So, My second one was when I met the character Bonnie Rockwyler, aka, if you remember from the original cartoon, the really mean bully cheerleader. And I say cheerleader. I'm going to touch upon that subject in a minute. The original Bonnie Rockwyler was, I don't know specifically what origin. She was of color. Let's just say that. She was definitely of Dominican, Puerto Rican, darker skin. She wasn't Caucasian, okay? They didn't make her what they did in the cartoon. She's not of color. She's not a dark-skinned girl at all. They make her an Asian. They have an Asian actress playing her, which I don't know whether to process is a problem. Personally, me, it kind of upsets me because, again, you're basing it off the original cartoon. Why not just get people that look like the original cartoon? But at the same time, I don't want to come across as racist and make it seem like, oh, I'm saying that certain people can't play certain roles, because I'm all for, equality and whatever. So I don't know how to approach this subject, And then, and then there was that. And then they add this girl named Athena, who was nowhere in the cartoon, but I guess this is just specifically the movies thing, But just casting overall was a problem. Just, Draken and Shigo were another type of just oi, because as you can remember from the original cartoon, Draken was blue, bright blue, and Shigo was green. In this one, they're not really blue, and they're not really green, but they're not exactly... I don't know what the problem... I'm gonna move into my next problem. The special effects, or the, CGI, and some of, how these, effects and how stuff looked and how it was approached is just... God, it was so cheaply done. So cheaply done. Just how certain explosions were, and how, certain makeup and just certain, house stuff. I don't know, just, it reminded me a lot of the last Avatar movie, the live action that they made based on Avatar: The Last Airbender cartoon, and that's loosely basing it. The guy obviously didn't do his research, because he didn't base it... He was going more based on the comic books versus the cartoon, which I find a huge problem. But the special effects in that movie were god... Some of the special effects, especially there was this one scene with, the Earth Kingdom and how they move rocks. Some of the special effects in that scene were god-awful. Obviously you could tell that the rocks were paper mache, and you could tell that they were held up by string and just moved across the screen, in one direction. It didn't have, inertia, and it didn't have, physics, It just looked like you picked it up and went like this, and then erased the string in post-production. That's how some of the special effects in this movie were approached. Stuff was, very cheaply done, or if it wasn't cheaply done, then it was too over the top, then it was too CGI, it was too cartoonish. And it's I know you're basing it off a cartoon, but that doesn't mean you have to be cartoon-y, if that makes any sense. You don't have to, exaggerate certain features and not others. The easy thing to do with Draken and Shigo would have been make them look blue or green through CGI. But something tells me that the actors probably didn't have it in their contract. They probably had it in their contract where they don't have to have their face, their physical appearance, altered through CGI or computer. And something tells me that the makeup budget was very cheap. Because it was just very, Draken had these weird veins for some reason. And he was somewhat... He wasn't not blue, but he wasn't blue how he was in the cartoon. He just had, a little bit of blue tinge. I don't know. I think they could have bumped it up. And Shigo was not even green really at all. And just like how they just overall looked, like the clothing and just, it just was, it was just brain melting. Next problem I want to talk about is overall certain plots that they changed over, like overarching narratives and ideas. So my main problem is I can forgive some of the CGI and I can forgive some of the casting because, you know, whatever. But you're basing your movie off of a very popular, very beloved cartoon from the 90s and the early 2000s. You own it, Disney. Breaking news. You own the property. You own the name, okay? You own Kim Possible. It is your name, your property, your cartoon. Like, you own it. You own the rights. You're not borrowing it for somebody else. You own it already. So you could do it, like, however you want. My idea would be to follow the cartoon. Just my opinion. I don't know. Maybe that's crazy. But they changed so many things about, like, the movie. Like, in this one, they have it where... Okay, so in the original cartoon, she was a cheerleader. That's kind of what helped with her, like, being able to move and jump around and flip and be the agent that she was, right? Being so flexible and stuff. In this one, there is no cheerleading squad, period. No cheerleading. That's like 80% of who Kim Possible is. That's like... A lot of the problems in the cartoon happen because of the cheerleading squad and the arguments that they have between each other and just everything. Right? So how can you take such a major detail away from a cartoon like this? Like, that was like the foundation of what she was. So there's no soccer team. Or there's no cheerleading team. But they have a soccer team that she wants to join, or that, she thought she was going to join, but they only have a soccer team. They don't have a cheerleading squad. That makes no sense. Why do you need to do that? I don't get that. Like, you own it. You have the ability to say, yeah, there's a cheerleading team, and make it where, you know, she has to fight for it. I don't, like... Because their whole thing is like, oh, they don't let, because she's a freshman and Bonnie Rockwyler is a sophomore, which is, again, a whole bunch of what? Because they were all the same age in the cartoon. They were all in the same class, so that doesn't make sense either. They have it where she tries out and she does great, but she only gets the equipment manager because they have this whole thing about freshmen not being on the soccer team and blah, 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 blah. You could have the same dynamic, but have it with cheerleaders. It makes no sense to make it a soccer team. Like, what's the point? I don't know. And something that was pointed out to me in a YouTube video, she doesn't have the communicator. Another big part of who she is. At least not the communicator she holds in her hand. Like in the cartoon, it's like a little like necklace that like projects a screen. Like that's very like 2019. That's very now. Like to update it, that's fine. Wade looks okay. Like he looks... okay, like, his casting is fine. He looks about a little, like, 10 to 13-year-old boy. That's fine. I don't have any problems with Wade. Another major problem, or at least another small detail that I find a major problem, is they introduce Rufus in this movie. Fine, whatever. But, in case you didn't know... Ron has always had Rufus. Always. Ever since he was a young child. Because we saw that in the cartoon when he got him. Because something about his dad being allergic to pet dander. So he got an animal with no hair. Okay. So, he's always had Rufus since he was a child. You know, since he was young. They introduce him now. When they're 15. Why? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Then how do they... because there's this whole best friend dynamic, you know, stick to each other thick and thin, blah, 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 you know. He was the best friend before, like, not before Kim, but, like, he's the second best friend to Kim. So, to introduce him like this seemed off. It seemed, like, why? And not only that, they introduced him so late in the movie. Like, they could have introduced him, like, pretty early on, like, not first thing, but, like, soon, like, somewhat beginning of the movie. But they introduced him, like, 20 minutes from the end. Why? Like, what's the... I mean, I guess, yes, I know CGI and computer stuff is very expensive. I know that, Disney. But Disney, you have the money. You have the budget to do what you can. So why are you doing this so cheaply and so, like, fast? Like, you're making the movie go faster than it actually is. Like, the movie goes pretty fast, and it's just, you're kind of, like, left like, what? They introduced a lot of new characters in this movie, too. They introduced this Athena girl that we find out, spoiler alert, is a robot. But she doesn't really add too much other than because she's built by Draken to steal, a.k.a. quote-unquote, steal Kim's spark, whatever the heck that means. They introduced a grandma that we saw in the cartoon, but not like how they're making it in this movie. You know, she's a lot younger, and, you know, there's this whole, like, dynamic of the mom and her helping Kim on her mission. Like, that's not how it worked in the cartoon, you know? And there's this whole problem about Kim, like, really exposing herself, like, as a secret agent. Like, not that people didn't know about it in the cartoon, but, like, I don't know. She, like, makes it where it's way too, like, out in the open. Like, she's using her spy stuff way too often, like, in just everyday life. You know, Kim didn't do that. You know, and it's just, like, there's this whole thing with the grappling hook. She didn't have, like, she did, but not on the everyday life, you know? And it's just, there's just so many problems. Like, just how the plot is put together, you know? But then they make it where Draken has a reaction to this machine, and he ends up becoming a child for some reason. And at the end, Draken ends up going to the school that Kim goes to, I guess, to thwart her or whatever. So, as garbage as this movie was, I am deeply concerned because how it ended, there's room for a sequel. And you know damn straight that even if this movie makes no money, Disney would so make another one because they can. And that's the thing that frustrates me, is that there's nothing memorable about this movie. Honestly, I didn't watch it that long ago. I only watched it maybe a week or two ago. And I've forgotten so much about it. Like, I've completely blanked it from my brain. You know, there's just so much nothing in this film. There's just so much lack. Like, I realize I don't have any long flowing red hair, and I realize I'm not a cheerleader, but I said this way before the movie came out, that I could have done a better job at this. I'm not blaming the actors. I'm not. But I'm blaming definitely the director and the producers and the people who put this movie together, because it's put together so sloppy and so, like, last minute in a way, and that's the kind of, like, upsetting thing. They've been working on this movie, I want to say, for at least over a year. So you've had time to, like, really develop what you wanted to do. And nobody's saying you have to debut this movie, like, tomorrow. Like, no offense, Kim Possible's been off the air for, like, what, 10 years now? So you're just all of a sudden making a live-action Kim Possible cartoon? Like, why? That's the thing, too. Kim Possible's been off the air for so long. Why did they all of a sudden pick up and go, hey, what if we made a Kim Possible movie? Like, where did that come from? Like, are you really so out of ideas, or is it just the fact, like, I hope it's not this, but something tells me that this is, like, the pilot episode of what's gonna be probably a live-action series, or it's gonna be this whole, probably, you know, this whole situation on, it's probably gonna be something on Netflix. I wouldn't be surprised if they did it, if they have it in their contract that they make a series out of this, or whatever. I don't know. But this just, the whole dynamic is just weird and different, and it feels awkward. Like, you know, they add Athena, who's a robot, they fix her up and make her good, and they have it where she comes to the team. Like, is it like they're trying to base it off the cartoon, but they don't want any attachment? Like, kind of like what they did with the last Airbender movie, where it's like loosely based on it, but you don't want any connection, so you're just putting little hints of it here and there. Like, is that it? Because that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand. I understand you want to make your own movies with their own clean slate, but then just make something new. Make it, you could make a movie of like this, but don't base it around a 2000 cartoon that was so popular. You know what I'm saying? Don't make it Kim Possible. Make it where it's about a girl, go to high school, you know, maybe she's a secret agent. Like, you could loosely base it on the somewhat Kim Possible idea. Oh, she's a teenager, but she has a secret life, because obviously 1,000,001 cartoons are doing that already. You know, Danny, or like, back in the day in the 2000s, Danny Phantom, and, you know, people like that. Nowadays we have like Star vs. the Force of Evil and Miraculous Ladybug and cartoons like that that are doing the whole, oh, I'm a teenager but I have a secret life thing. You know, you could do it where it's a kid with either superpowers or they have a secret job, like a secret agent, and then all this debacle, this whole situation with the evil scientist happens. You could make a different movie without it being Kim Possible. That's just my point, you know? But, as a whole, I understand what they tried to do. I really do. I really see what they wanted, like what they tried to, I just think they did it bad. You know, I just think they did it sloppy. I think they did it cheap, which you can't afford with a movie like that. You can't do special effects on the cheap side when you do an action movie like an action movie like this. You know, where there's explosions and fighting and everything else. You can't, like, cheap out on the special effects. Like, more than half of what she did, like the backflips and the, like, kicking people and fighting, that was done with, you know, like, supports, like, where, you know, she's on wires and they pull her up and obviously they get rid of it later. Like, that's not, like, have the actress actually train in real martial arts. Like, maybe she'll never get to do a backflip, that just cause, but you could somewhat build her up to better than where she is. You know what I'm saying? Don't make her, like, oh, I'm an actress and I'm doing, like, I'm fighting, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't, like, plaster fakeness, you know? Like, you can make it a little bit more authentic. But, I'm not gonna say it's the most terrible film I've ever seen, because I think Avatar: Last Airbender is right up there. But I wonder why. You know, why didn't they do what they can? Because again, Disney owns the cartoon, they own the rights. Why didn't they make the movie like the cartoon? Like, why is there such a, like, gap? Why is there such a, like, oh, we're doing it, but we're only doing it like little trickles, like only here and there and somewhat, like, you know, I just, like, you do it so weak and I don't understand why. But yeah, it's just not worth it. It's not worth, what's it, an hour and a half? It's not a worth, you know, you're better off watching something else. You're better off watching the entirety of the actual Kim Possible cartoon in full. Because there's possibility. I don't know if it's on Netflix, but you could probably find it on a movie's website. I've done it, you know. So, but that's just me, you know. I just don't think highly of this movie. I don't want to say it never should have been made, because, and it's sad because a Kim Possible movie could have been great. It's such a good like idea to turn from a cartoon to a live action, but it just, in this context, how they wrote it, how it was put together, just overall it just doesn't work. It kind of just falls flat. And if the only thing I could hope is that movie directors see what they did, realize, oh my god, we made a mistake, and either fix it, either make another one and make it 10 times better than what this one is, or if they don't ever touch Kim Possible again, which would be fine, if they ever do other Disney or Nickelodeon cartoons and make them live action, like my vote would be Danny Phantom, because I voted for that early. Make sure you put the time and effort and research, you know. Make sure you put all the money and support you can into the special effects, the casting, the plot, the just how everything is put together, okay? But that's just me. But that wraps up this video. If you have any suggestions of what you want to hear me talk about, write down in the comments, like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!